Okay, so today I am making this video. I shot this video today. This is about the Spruce Mountain Trail in Maine, which is part of the Georgia's Highland Path, which also covers the Ragged Mountains, and I guess just some other areas around Camden, Maine. This is technically in Camden, very close to Hope, and as you can see, this is driving in from the direction of Camden. It's an extremely beautiful drive-in. You get a view that was actually Spruce Mountain back there over Mirror Lake, and that view is really exceptional. And we're coming up on the parking lot for this trail. It's not really a park, and I had no idea it even existed until I drove past this. So there's the parking lot, and you can see this is actually as full as I've seen it. And when you get out of your car, there's the sign right there, which we'll get a closer look at. But yeah, this is the start of the trail, and look at that. The map is not great, which is not too much of a big deal because the trail is extremely well marked, as we'll see. So we start the trail with these stairs, which is always good. Those are useful when you get back after the trail if you're not in such great shape, which I'm not in great shape, but this is a good, fun trail. The trail starts off very simply. Here's some of the markings I was talking about. Very bright blue. It looks like they must have been painted this season. You can see them from very far away, and even if you can't, we can zoom in. But yeah, the trail is extremely well marked. It starts off very flat and just almost like a nature path, and then, 10-15 minutes in, you get to this first rocky area, which is when you start to do a little bit of real hiking, which is fun. And it also sets a tone. The first time I did this trail, I've done it, I think 5 times now. The first time I did, I got to this, and I got a little bit excited because I thought maybe there'd be, a lot of up and down and getting into quite a few clear areas on the trail where you'd spend a little more time in the sun. But very quickly, I figured out that you are going to head back into the woods, and this will be, pretty typical of Maine hiking, where you are just spending a lot of time in the woods, but it's very beautiful, and it does have a lot to offer once you hop down that hill. So this is what a lot of, especially the first probably mile to mile and a half of this trail is. There's a good view here to the right. It's almost like some Jurassic Park stuff. You want a brontosaurus just eating some of those tree leaves or whatever would fit in. But just beautiful views when you do get the clearings. And we're coming up on some stepping stones. This is actually really fun. And as you can see, I'll leave a little bit of audio in. I don't exactly handle these super elegantly this time. I stepped on a rock that was a little bit loose, but I made it. And that's all that really matters. And so this is actually my favorite part of the, bottom portion of the trail before you get into the elevation gain, which is where it looks like, quite some time ago, just due to the growth, but there was some sort of a pretty major rock slide, which has resulted in, obviously all these big boulders, which are pretty cool to look at, but these green plants, I don't know if you notice them, they're really leafy, have sort of their own branches. I don't know what they are. I'm not a botanist or really into that kind of thing. Here's a better shot. But they are just really cool and really bright green. And this is a nice spot. It's a little early in the trail to take a break, but this is just a really pretty area pretty early on in the hike. But yeah, so really nice. I tried to get some cool shots. I spent more time on my way down, but by then I was just a little bit tired, and my hands were not quite steady enough to try and pull off any sort of like cool faux crane shots. So this is actually starting up the path. So that last clip we started up, you turn around a corner when you get to the end of the, mostly flat part. And then you're just going, up for quite a while. And it does get a little bit rocky in portions. So you definitely want to watch your step. But if you're like me, if you're not in great shape, then when you're going up this hill, slow and steady is your best bet. But you do keep going, and it does flatten out very briefly, which is a good sign. That means you're actually starting to get to a more interesting part of the trail, because the initial ascent isn't great, but then you're just right back up a hill. So don't get your hopes up when it flattens out. it is definitely going to be back uphill for you very soon. But once you get this ridge on the left, which you're pretty close to after that flat area, that's when you start to actually, get views and a little bit more of a breeze because you're getting significantly higher up. And I think this is when you're starting, you can kind of see over to the left a little bit of a view. Not anything that would show on the camera from right here, but you're close. And you've got this, just this ledge, this big drop off into the woods that you've been walking through. And I guess, hopefully those boulders aren't going to go rolling down on you while you're down there. So this is the first good view, which is only probably about 5 minutes after that last area. So you very rapidly, once you get to the sort of top of the really steep initial climb, you very quickly get into much nicer terrain. And just right up here on the left, you'll get actually a really nice view of Mirror Lake, which is that lake that I drove past at the very beginning. And I guess these are the Ragged Mountains over here. I don't really know, though. But yeah, it's a very nice view, and you'll get to see the lake here. And it was a beautiful day today. Yeah, so this is a great trail, and actually, by the time that you get to this point in the trail, there are definitely, a few steep sections left that are, pretty challenging if you're not in great shape. But on the whole, it actually gets fairly easy. There's a lot of up and down, and this is getting into the first big clearing, which probably takes another 10 minutes or so after that last spot where you kind of first get to see. But just a good wide view of all of it, and it really is beautiful out there. And this is a very good spot if, you want to take your first break and have a little snack. But I think from that point, maybe take a couple minutes and just keep on trucking, because the very next section, you're just getting these sort of lighter woods. And this is some of the easiest hiking on the whole trail. And then you will eventually start to go up a little more as you get into the second main clearing. So actually, it does get rocky. Forgot about this spot where, this is probably the toughest part of the trail beyond that initial climb, just because it gets really steep for a little while when you're just right on the edge of getting to the second clearing, which is one of the best views outside of when you get to the very top. This is a really great spot if you wanted to stop, because there's a lot of space up here. There's a little trail marker pile of rocks that, signifies, I guess, is, the greatest view. We'll see that here in a moment. Right there, the bottom right, and then you just look up, and this is probably your best view of Camden, and sort of looking right down on Camden, I guess, over on the left. But yeah, I think just because this is the first really big clearing where there's space that you can sort of move around, and you're close enough to the ocean. You're closer to the ocean here, I think, than any of the other spots. Getting to the next clearing is pretty short, so I just did this sort of fast video to get there. It's also not a great view up there, and yeah, so I mean, you can get there with no problem, but it's not the most scenic part of the trail, which is fine, because it means that you are closer to the top, which we're getting to now. And the last push to get to the summit of Spruce Mountain is, pretty interesting. It's a mix of, just sort of hopping between rocks, and some of it is just, very easy to follow trail. Some of it, obviously not so much, but by the time you're up there, you can basically, at any point, look to your left and see some pretty gorgeous scenery. And you can also take a look at that radio tower to the right, which, it's there. So when you get to the top, it's actually a little interesting. There's some big propane tanks, and that's actually, I guess it's Red Zone wireless. It's some sort of a wireless internet solution for people who just, really live in the boonies and can't get, cable internet or DSL. But yeah, I'd wanted to hike all the way to the top with a continuous video from here, but I stumble right after I cut. That's why I cut it there. But this is from the top. So I don't know why I didn't show hiking to the very top, but this is a view from the top. I love when you get sort of the clouds like that, because it's just a really great view. Those are the Ragged Mountains. The trail goes across the highway, Highway 17, and you can hop right onto a trail over there, which I haven't done yet. I don't know why. We've had great weather, so I need to get over there one weekend. But really, these are the propane tanks I was talking about. So when you get up there, you can get to the other side of this mountain, of Spruce Mountain. And so if you follow this trail sort of all the way and cut to the left, and we're going to see that, you'll get to the snow bowl. And I don't actually go in there because there was a couple down there eating lunch. So I end up taking sort of a right here. I think I'm actually going to, with the camera, show that. Yeah, so that's the direction that we're going to go in just a second. But if you keep going this way, you will get really close down to the Camden Snow Bowl and a pretty good view of Mount Batty. Well, a really great view of Mount Batty. Pretty good view of Mount McGuntacook, except for there are just a whole bunch of trees in your way down there. So I go back this other way, which I think actually gives you a better view, even though you're not like as right on top of the snow bowl as you are in that other direction. You still get a really phenomenal view, and you can still see the Ragged Mountains a little bit from here. And so there's that great ocean view. It was a really good day for the ocean. The ocean isn't always that visible. And so, yeah, when you first pop out over here, if you stop at the top, this is the view that you get. But your best bet is to keep hiking a little bit here and go down, because that's when you can get a really great view of Mount McGuntacook to your left. And so that's what we're doing right now. And this is pretty easy hiking, as long as you pick your step well, it's pretty easy stuff. There, you can kind of see it. So you just have to work your way down. It's all about finding a view that isn't totally obstructed by trees, which is really, that's the story of hiking in Maine, is getting away from the trees. So there we go, and we'll do a nice pan. There's Mount McGuntacook, Mount Batty, the smaller sort of ledge off to the right, which is only really famous because it sits right on top of Camden, and it's an amazing place to catch a sunrise over Camden. But yeah, so this is my video of the Spruce Mountain Trail, which is part of the Georgia's Highland path, and I hope you enjoyed it.